You don't need to worry about the alternative minimum tax yet. Stay to the end of this video because you might need to worry about it here soon. But for right now, I'm not worried about it, and you shouldn't either. And if you like what I do on this channel, by the way, buy me a cup of coffee, a cup of good decaf. Let's take our morning sip as Scott Adams. Oh my goodness, he's a non-person anymore. As Scott Adams would say, take your morning sip. Oh, that's good, baby. That is good. So buy me a cup of coffee. The link is a doobie-doo. And don't forget, we'll be going live tonight at 8 p.m. All right, so my man Wayne had written in a long email. Not reading the whole thing. I read about the first 6 or 7 sentences and got a gauge of what he's asking me. There's no question there either, man. It might have been towards the end. I don't know, but I deleted it. Can't read these diatribes, man. And diatribes, too strong a word. Long-winded emails, let's put it that way. All right. So his concern was obviously he misunderstood how the AMT works. So let's just cut right to the chase here real quick. What he was worried about was he said, look, let me just go right here. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. I'm not sure if you read this link or not, but 2023, the exemption for AMT, if you're single, is $81,000. If you're married, is $126,000. All right, and that's factually correct. The exemption of AMT, if you're single, is about $80,000 and $126,000. Please understand, the exemption is not the same as your income. All right, so I used to get this question a lot when it came to estate tax because a lot of people didn't understand how the estate tax worked. Let's look at this. In this case, the exemption is basically a credit, if you will. All right. So if you have taxes due of $81,000 or less, you are not subject to AMT. All right. Taxes due. That's not the same as income. That's taxes due of $81,000. We'll get in there what that equates to income. All right. If you're single and your taxes due are $81,000 or less, there is no AMT. Now, if your taxes are that high, if your tax due is that much, you're making a lot of money. All right, we'll get into it here in a second. If you're married and your taxes due are $126,000 or less, you're not subject to AMT. So remember, that's taxes due. That's your tax. The AMT is like a credit against those taxes. So if you have $81,000 of taxes due, the AMT exemption is an $81,000 credit. And this is the difference between credits and deductions, frankly. A lot of people don't understand. A credit is a dollar for dollar reduction in your taxes due. Has nothing to do with your taxable income. It's your taxes due. Deductions are reductions in your taxable income. All right. We want credits. Credits are much more valuable than deductions. So you're reducing your taxable income. That's we'll take it, but the credit is much better because it reduces by dollar for dollar the actual taxes you pay. You got to know the difference between credits and deductions. We want credits. Credits are much, much more valuable. A refundable credit, actually, for earned income tax credit and whatnot, is actually where if it reduces if you had $10,000 in taxes due and you get a refundable tax credit of $15,000, not only is that $10,000 of taxes due wiped off, you're getting $5,000 back. It's a subsidy. It is 100%. It's welfare. But that's a refundable tax credit, which are great. But we want a tax credit. If we can get a tax credit as opposed to deduction, we want it. All right. So anyway, this case right here, what he was mistaken, he didn't understand the difference between an exemption is a credit and how much that reflects in your income that you have to make. All right. So let me just real quick, a brief tutorial on AMT. Basically, in 1969 or so, I can't remember. There used to be about 300 families that didn't pay their fair share, and rightly so. I mean, they had the top of the tax bracket was like 75% or something like that back in the old days. But there's so many deductions and whatnot that no one paid 75%. So there's a number of people that use all these deductions to offset any taxable income. So they basically had no taxes, even though they had millions of dollars of income. So Congress rightly enacted a law that said, hey, if you're on the tippity top, as that esteemed economist from BU, Boston University, AOC, would say, you're on the tippity top, you have to pay something. Of course, my preference would be just get a flat tax and be done with it, but it'll never happen because there's too much money and power in the lobbying in the halls of Congress to look upon favored people. Hey, you want a tax deduction? Pay up, baby. Oh, you didn't pay enough? You're not getting a tax deduction. See, so the Congress is never going to relinquish that. They'll never relinquish that power because it's profitable for them, man. And the lobbyist is profitable for them too, so they could write it off as a business expense. Shouldn't be able to write off lobbying as a business expense as a deduction, but I guess they can. All right, so anyway, so they passed this law. Now the drawback was, it's just like the initial taxation of Social Security from 1983, which the Democrats in Congress and Reagan signed. They did not index Social Security taxation for inflation, and they did not index the AMT for inflation. So what we came to find was right here, come 2017, right here, 5 million taxpayers were subject to AMT, to include your old buddy Josh. Even though I have massive deductions with 4 kids, we got a lot, healthcare costs, we got freaking homeowner mortgage interest. We try to tithe. Still got subject to AMT. I had to pay an extra $7,000 of income tax in 2017 taxes for my tax year 2017 because of AMT. Because the reason wasn't indexed for inflation right here. If you're single back in 2017 or before, all you needed was $120,000 of income to be subject to AMT. If you're married, only you needed $160. And back in 2017, I think my taxable income was like $220 or something like that. So that was it, man. So if you had anything above income above $160, you were subject to AMT. Isn't that crazy? And before the Trump tax bill, the Tax Cuts and Job Act of 2017, single 120. So if you had more, again, $120,000 of income and you're single, you were subject to AMT. $160,000 of income if you're married, you were subject to AMT. Now, because of Trump, remember Trump only did this for the rich, tippity top. Now you have to have, well, actually in 2023, your exemption amount, your not your exemption amount, your income before subject to, right here. If you're single, your income before being subject to AMT is $578. If you're married before being subject to AMT is $1.1 million. So I'm not paying $1.1 million. I don't get $1.1 million in taxes on the income, so I'm not subject to any AMT. So unless you're making roughly $600,000 or more as a single guy, there's no AMT. Unless you're making over $1.1 million as a married guy, there's no AMT, none, or married lady, none whatsoever. The problem is what happens after the TCJA goes away. All right, now we're back to these numbers, which will be inflated. I don't know what these numbers. So if you're single, let's just say it's 120 times, we'll say 1.03 times 1.03 times 1.03 times 1.03. Could have done this, screwing that up. So you have 1.03. I don't know. Let's say it's one. Actually, I don't have my TI. So let's say 120 at a 3% inflation rate, that inflates to 140 because it is indexed for inflation now. Unlike Social Security taxation, in 2013, Obama signed legislation that was passed by the Republican Congress, both the Senate and the House, to index the AMT with inflation. The problem was the amounts were still so low to begin with that so many people are still sucked into the AMT. And Republicans are you think they care. They're Democrats. Democrats care about the working man. Yeah, right. Republicans care about entrepreneurs right now. They're still paying tax on Social Security. Every single year, more and more people do because it's still based on the 1983 thresholds that hasn't been indexed. And it probably never will, frankly. It's insane. Insane. And Clinton in 1993 signed legislation to make your income tax even more on Social Security with a Congress that was dominated by Democrats. But they care for the poor. Then why have they indexed Social Security taxation? Insane, dude. It's insane. Anyway, so AMT at least is indexed, but it's starting on such a low threshold that it's not going to be hard to see a lot of us being subject to AMT again in the future. Now, this would be an argument in favor of Roth conversions, but my argument, I get that because that is a pending issue here for sure. But again, if you're married filing jointly and you have 160, we'll say that's 180 of income, yeah, you're gonna be subject to RMDs. Not RMDs. You're gonna be subject to AMT, 100%. Yeah, if the tax law reverts back without any changes, and I don't know about that, man. That's an easy one to say. We're going to keep the indexing we're going to keep the exemption amounts for AMT at they are now because so many people are sucked into this. It's hard for me to see that reverting back to pre-2017. I could be wrong, Not sure I'd be doing anything in advance of that because it's just that is a good question though. I mean, that would be a reason to do Roth conversions, but I don't know, man. That's kind of like saying the IRMA stuff because IRMA's close to the threshold. IRMA's a little bit higher. That's the how much the Medicare premium tax you have to pay with certain thresholds. But it's one of those that you're just kind of sitting there right on the cusp. If you're way over the cusp, yeah, Roth conversions might be strategic, but I don't know. That's one of those. I'm putting my reliance on Congress to recognize that they have to index this for inflation. You know, maybe I'm a gullible, but I can't imagine it reverting back to pre-Trump years, where all of a sudden in 2027 we have what was 200,000 taxpayers are going to go to 5 to 6 million are going to be subject to AMT. I just can't see that happen, man. To take things away from people is not what Congress does. So to say only 2,000 were subject to AMT for the last 5 years, and now we're going to say a factor of magnitudes, 6 million or something like that would be now subject to AMT. I just can't see that going through. You can imagine all the letters and the protest. I don't see it, man. But it could happen. And that's why you got to be paying attention to stuff. That's why you got to subscribe to the channel. All right, if you like what you see here, don't forget to buy me a cup of coffee, subscribe, and we'll see you tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern.